Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 7, episode 14. My name is Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week I'm talking to Victoria from Central Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. We talk about life as a fisheries observer, working on fishing boats for days at a time, her sometimes challenging childhood with mental illness in the family, coping methods she's used like medication and alcohol, and how she deals with airplanes and more. After the show, let me know what you think. You can reach out by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. By the way, please do head over and leave a quick rating or review wherever you listen to the show. It helps drive us up in the algorithms. A few of my usual announcements. Thanks for the incredible ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing, you can read all about the various levels at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. And I have to mention, of course, the book Sounds Like Misophonia, a self-help book by Dr. Jane Gregory and I, is now out in the UK and will be released in the United States on November 14th. You can order or pre-order wherever you're located. This episode is also sponsored by a personal journaling app I developed for iOS and Android called Basil. Basil provides AI-powered insights into your journal entries and guides you with new writing prompts based on those insights. You can even explore many different therapy modalities and philosophies. It's available for iOS and Android, and check the show notes or go to HelloBasal, HelloBasal.com. All right, now here's my conversation with Victoria. Victoria, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Adil, for having me.
No, of course. So, I wanted to always start off kind of whereabouts are you located?
I'm located in Newport, Oregon. It's on the coast, like the central coast of Oregon. So it's
Nice,
a
nice.
beautiful area. It's a
Oh, I'm
big
sure.
fishing town. So, yeah.
Cool. And so, related to fishing, you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a fisheries observer biologist. So I go out with commercial fishermen and collect data on their catch, and it's for like science support, conservation management,
Mm-hmm.
and just making sure they're not, keeping any priority species. And so I'm a little like authoritative out there. Um,
Yeah.
it's quite the experience. I get to see a lot of cool species: orcas, humpback whales,
Oh, wow.
sharks. Yeah, and every month it's a new boat too, which is good for me because I like the change.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so maybe talk about what are the kind of the misophonia challenges out there? You're kind of stuck on a boat around a bunch of sailors and a
Yeah,
bunch of fish and water flopping around.
all right. I actually don't run into too many problems out there with that because
Mm.
the boats are so loud. Like there's always hydraulics and the engines running, and
Oh.
so there's just constant loud noise happening all the time. And so I don't really run into too many issues except for like I have to share a stateroom with the other deckhands. And so if one of them's snoring or something, then I bring my headphones and listen to white noise or some music or something like that. Or if I'm like watching a movie on my phone and somebody else is watching a movie on their phone and they're not listening to it through headphones, then that's a trigger for me too.
Right.
So, like, yeah,
Are these multi-day trips?
they are. Yeah,
Mm.
they can be from a day up to a week.
Oh,
Just really
wow. Okay.
depends. Yeah, and it's all on call too. So, kind of makes for planning things pretty difficult.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. That. That makes sense. That yeah, the background noise definitely would help, I would imagine. Do you have to wear ear protection at all for that, for the background noise, or just kind of deal with it?
No,
Yeah,
unless I have to go into the engine room, which I normally don't have to do, but yeah, it's just like really loud white noise. So it's
gotcha.
perfect.
Yeah. Not too bad. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Then how about back on land? What's going on
Yeah,
noise
back
wise?
on land. So I am going back to school. But I'm going back for nursing, but I'm having
Mm-hmm.
second thoughts on that because I actually listened to the podcast episode with you interviewed a nurse. I think her name was Lola. Because I was just, it's like I want, um, I don't know. I like to try new things, and I don't believe in having one career forever. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to try the nursing thing, but it's like, gosh, I don't know if I can do it with my misophonia. Like I wouldn't be able to feed the patients, or there's a lot of typing that goes around too, and
I mean, I would imagine though, yeah, I guess it kind of depends on the situation, but that's maybe also a bad thing where you're kind of like dependent on the situation. You don't have a lot of control.
right, yeah. So now I'm kind of thinking about going in another direction too, and doing like geospatial analysis where I can just
Mm,
work from home, and then I really wouldn't have to worry about misophonia too much with that. And yeah.
right. So you're wanting to go back to school just for a change, not necessarily like misophonia from your current job is driving that decision. But
Well, with my job, it's an amazing job, but it's not something that I could do forever because I'm
mm,
always gone.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And, I'd like something that's a little bit more lucrative and stuff
mm,
with like to keep up with inflation.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, I'd like to be able to afford to buy a house one day. So,
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, so yeah, no, but yeah, career move definitely. Misophonia is probably gonna. You're probably thinking about misophonia, and how that's gonna play in. Yeah, definitely. Something that could be work from home obviously would be ideal. Um, have you had jobs before that were kind of in office or things like that that were not on a boat?
Um, no, I was a bartender before, so
Mm,
there's a lot of noises around that, like I didn't tend to get too triggered,
mm-hmm.
misophonia. I always like, it's like we just plan out our lives around this disorder that we have, like
Yes.
every
Yeah.
move we make, like every trip we go on, or what we're going to do for work, or where we're going to live. It's like just constantly thinking about this disorder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing is sometimes we forget because we don't want to think about it. Sometimes people forget and then they're trapped. And then
I
they're
know. I
stuck in that house.
actually,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So some of the coping skills too, or one of them is like I always bring what I call emergency headphones with me everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
just in case I'm stuck in a situation where there's a trigger sound, and then I can just immediately put in my headphones to block it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I try to carry my AirPod Pros are just a little bit smaller around with me, but yeah, any kind of headphones would help too. Earplugs even, just to
Yeah.
keep in a pinch. Although earplugs they don't really help me too much. It just like makes yeah. I was talking to somebody earlier. It's just like earplugs kind of make me look for the sound more because nothing's on
Mhm.
top of it. It's just quieter. So I'm like trying harder to listen
Yeah.
for it.
I totally agree. I used to try the earplug thing, and it honestly just made things worse.
Yeah.
And now it's almost like it gave me a new trigger, and now
Mm,
I get triggered by like muffled sounds, like
mm-hmm.
muffled TVs, or if we like can't quite make out a song, but there's a song playing, or
Right.
yeah, it the earplugs did not work, but wireless headphones are nice because, like the ear pods, because, you can kind of like hide them behind your
Mm-hmm.
hair. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's not so noticeable if someone's
Yeah.
eating with their mouth open and you're like, oh God. And you quickly put in your
Right.
headphones and they're like, what are
Right.
you doing?
Speaking of eating with mouth open, I mean, I think you mentioned in one of your emails visual triggers. How do you, how's that, how's that kind of treating you?
Yeah, visual triggers are actually a pretty big one for me. And I've had the visual triggers since I was a kid. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, um, this, like, my mom and my dad both do it, but they just like will like wiggle their feet. When it
Yeah.
sounds funny, but so we'll be watching a movie or whatever, and they just won't stop like wiggling. And that would drive me crazy because I couldn't focus on what we were watching on the TV. And I just would
Yeah.
zone in on like their movements. And so I'd yeah, end up telling him, like, you gotta, like, can you please just relax, stop moving,
What did they
or
say?
try to like block it out. They just, um, yeah, I don't know. They weren't too supportive. They didn't really understand it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're more of like, just get over it kind of thing, which is the worst thing you could tell someone that has
Right.
misophonia,
Right.
like, oh, get over it. Like, I should have thought of that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
cured.
Wow. Genius. So was that kind of one of the first triggers? Like, how did that start and progress for you?
It actually was one of the first triggers.
Mm.
So it started when I think I was around 8 years old, which seems to be like the normal age for when
Yep.
other people, yeah.
It's kind of peak
And
misophonia.
yeah. And there's just, I was sitting in class doing a test, and there's a girl sitting behind me, and she was smacking gum or eating or something. But I just remembered being like so annoyed with her to the point where I would just like rush through the test and I just wanted to, get out of there. I didn't care if I was failing or not, just to
Mm.
avoid that sound. And then
So it
going
wasn't a family
home.
member. It was at school.
Yeah. My parents both actually they ate with their mouth closed. They didn't really have too many trigger sounds until later on in life when I
Mm.
started developing more triggers. Um,
So it was just
but
creepy feet at first with your
yeah,
parents. Yeah.
yeah. It was just so distracting, I
Oh
guess.
yeah. Yeah. Those. Yeah. I don't even think about it. Kind of
Yeah.
makes me kind of grossed out. Anyways. Okay.
Yeah.
So did things get worse at school? Like, did it start to affect grades and
Yeah,
social life too?
yeah, social life, grades, like I always did really well on my homework, but then when it came to the tests, I would just bomb the test because it's like when you have to focus that hard on something and really like pull
Yeah.
you know, memories out of your brain, that's when like the triggers get even worse and
Mm-hmm.
intensified. And so, like, if someone's just like, clicking their pen or tapping or just even like a loud breather, you know, I would just, I'd freak out and rush through the exam and as quickly as possible, and guess the
Wow.
answers. And just, yeah, so I really struggled in school. And I was just a, C's get degrees student. But then when I got into college, I, found like the Learning Disability Center and went there and was tried to explain it to them. And so I was able to um, sit in a quiet room kind of by myself every time I needed to take an exam or quiz, which
Did
really helped
they
a lot.
Yeah, did you explain the misophonia? And so did they use misophonia as the reason, or did they, I don't know, use some other
Um, they didn't use
condition?
that. They
Yeah,
used just like, like ADD or gets too
gotcha.
distracted by people like getting up and walking around or whatever. So they use that because I mean a lot of people even still don't know about misophonia.
Right.
And it's such a embarrassing thing to try to like talk to somebody about
Absolutely.
and explain it. Like, how do I even? It's hard to find the right words. It's like, how do I make it so I don't sound totally insane, or they
Mm-hmm.
don't get like totally upset with me?
Well, and then I think it's funny, like as we, well, not funny, but as we get older, like sometimes we just um because yeah, you're right. I mean, it takes so much energy just to think about preparing for it that sometimes we just like screw this. I'm not even gonna
Mm.
bother. Like trying to bring it up, and then we just try to avoid situations more.
Yeah, almost like, gosh, and I really don't like the name either, like
Not a
misophonia. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
it's terrible, and
yep.
it's already a very embarrassing disorder to try to explain to someone, and then they give it a silly name like that, which doesn't even like. I don't. I think they could have done a better job on the scientific name for it because it's so much more than just hatred of sounds. It's
Right,
like excruciating pain that we
right.
feel, and um and like the visualizations and everything. It's yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in my speaking like off the cuff here, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, because of the visual triggers and the more we're learning about misophonia and how it might be related to, I don't know, like past events, like I feel like in a few well, I don't know, some number of years, it might have a different name because it just might be realized it's not just about sound. There's something else going on. So, there's hopefully there'll be an opportunity to change the name up to be as something a little bit more accurate as we learn more
Right.
about this. Um,
I know.
what
I
did,
just wish there was a
yeah.
cure, like just one
Mm,
little pill we
hmm
could take and then it's all
hmm
cleared up.
Well, during school, did your parents try to get you some help at all? Or was it just straight up get over it?
No.
Yeah.
I had a pretty rough upbringing actually. And yeah, so I didn't, I grew up really poor and my mom was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia when I was 8, and
hmm
so then she was gone for like the rest of my like throughout my teenage years, and so it's just my dad raising me, and he struggled with alcoholism and depression, so
hmm
because he was so depressed about what happened with mom, and so he didn't really care to get me the help, and we also just couldn't afford it.
Did you have siblings too?
I do have a half brother
Yeah,
who's
okay.
quite a bit older than me, and I think that he has it because there's times where like we both get annoyed by the same things with dad. Like
Mm,
dad, he wears dentures and like his teeth slip around in his mouth when he talks, and you can hear it.
yeah.
And so we both get kind of annoyed with that, or like if we're in a movie theater and there's someone behind us who's eating popcorn and smacking their lips, and him and I will both turn around and just glare at the person and then
Right.
look at each other and be like, "Yep, we're moving."
It's the sibling glare. It's the sibling miso glare.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so yeah, so interesting. I mean, well, interesting. Your miso started around age 8. Your mom was kind of diagnosed around when you were 8. Was schizophrenia,
Mhm.
that was it, did it happen all of a sudden, or just
She,
curious?
so messed up. She like had depression. I went to the doctor for that, and the doctor
Mm,
prescribed her with Prozac, and it
mm,
just triggered this gene in our family. And she
mm,
just it was never the same since. She's a lot better now, and
Mm-hmm.
she's on medications, and she's back to normal. It's, we have a great relationship now, but yeah, it was pretty rough there for a while, and like being that young, and like having to witness like your parents getting divorced and like alcohol and poverty and like seeing your
Mm-hmm.
mom doing things that are just like very strange. You don't see other parents doing, it's all like,
Oh, so there was a, your parents split up around that time as well?
mm-hmm.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's yeah, you're not you're absolutely right. That sounds really rough. I'm sorry you went when your whole family went through that. Understandable, yeah, that there's other things going on that
Uh,
your parents aren't going to get you help necessarily for something that they don't understand. Um,
right. Yeah.
w- and so okay, so then well, I mean, let's move forward to kind of like you got some help in college where at least you got to get a separate separate room for tests. When you got out into the world, like what was starting to happen around then for you?
Gosh, it's always been something that I kind of kept to myself up
Mm-hmm.
until um I was about 25, and then I decided to, Google it, and then I also found the Kelly Ripa interview and how she
Yep.
talked about it, and it's kind of how we all just discovered it. But
Yeah. Yeah,
I
around
thought it
around
was the only.
2009, 2011. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, yeah. So it was then like my early 20s,
yeah.
and but before that, I just didn't really like. I try to talk about it to my parents or like my boyfriends, um, but they still are just like, you're crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I just
Well,
thought
it's
that there
not
was
something
something
that's
wrong
nice to
with
hear
me.
of. Yeah, not something nice to
Mhm.
hear, especially with your upbringing. It's
Right.
um, it's a yeah. That's so. Wait, so your partners were saying you're crazy. Did you say your friends as well? Like kind of everyone around you.
Yeah, friends, they like just like having a relationship with misophonia is so difficult too. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like you gotta find someone who also has it in order to like have a successful relationship. And because I've dumped guys because they ate too loudly and they
Mm-hmm.
just weren't understanding,
Mm-hmm.
my disorder, and or I've been dumped too because they're just like
Don't
they
want to deal
can't
with this.
deal with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But I'm very fortunate now because I have a partner, and he's so supportive, and he works with me, and he's just like, whenever you have a trigger, just let me know and we'll work through it. And I think he might have a little bit of it, but he doesn't have it to the severity that I do.
How did you broach the subject?
Oh my gosh, with him, I don't really remember.
You wear a T-shirt that said "I Misophonia." It means that.
Yeah, I wore a hat, so it's misophonia. I think it might have just been over dinner one night we were having
Mm-hmm.
drinks. I tend to spill it out whenever like I have a couple drinks in me, and then I'm like, I
Yep.
have this thing, because then I
Yep.
have the balls to tell people.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. 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 I hear you.
Yeah. Um. Unfortunately, yeah, like alcohol was became a not anymore, but it was like a coping mechanism for
Just
me
a little
with misophonia.
self-medication. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was like one of the only things that would help. Like if I had to go hang out with like my parents and stuff, and because they're big triggers for us, and I would show up and be like a little bit buzzed so
Yeah.
I could hang out with them.
Yeah. It's a little dangerous because if you're a little bit beyond buzz, you get into that. You can get into kind of like a ranty extra extra agitated mode, which is
Yeah,
not where you want to be. But
no. No,
Also,
not
you
at
don't,
all.
yeah, you don't want to have to, yeah, you don't have to depend on that. Um,
Mm-mm.
okay. Well, that's good. I mean, that's good that your partner
Yeah.
here is supportive at least.
He's got
How
like
was,
his own little sounds too. Like
yeah,
he doesn't get annoyed too much about like loud eating, but if I, it's funny, like if I'm eating something that it tastes really good and I'm saying like, this is
mm-hmm.
delicious, that sound drives
He's like,
him
shut the
nuts and
fuck
he'll
up.
just
Okay.
run out of the room. So I had to quickly learn to stop doing that. But yeah, just having someone that's supportive and not judgmental, is so refreshing.
Sometimes it's kind of all you need, right? It's like as long as
Yeah.
the other person like as long as you know that the other person is trying, that somehow
Hmm.
often can tell your brain that you're not about to die from a
Yeah.
sound. No one's out to get you.
Right. Yeah. It's so strange. I was thinking about it before we had this interview about how like just some things that could talk about. And there's one thing I discovered, and it's I noticed that like if people are joking around with you and like giving an example of like certain sounds, like then it doesn't bother me. But it's
If it's actually funny,
when they're unaware that
yeah.
they're making the sounds, that's when I feel it and I'm triggered.
Yeah, humor is a known coping method, and I think it's just all part of that something in you, your lizard brain, humor, or just kind of the understanding in the other person, the empathy it can just calm you down and make you feel like you're not under threat, make that lizard brain not be on guard. But
Right.
yeah, you're right. If the person if but if you're on somebody who's unaware and they're making the sound, then I think that part of you thinks that something's about to jump on you.
Mhm.
It's literally like being out in being in the jungle like thousands of years ago. It's kind of what it feels like.
I don't know. To me, it feels like it's like a burning feeling
Mm-hmm.
in the back of my throat and in my chest that kind
Mm-hmm.
of escalates, and and that that's where that it's like mixed with anger too.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and
definitely
it's like
anger.
it just
Yeah,
builds and builds and builds and builds, and it's like the only release is for that sound to stop or to like you just want to like scream.
right. Yeah,
Horrible.
and it's the onset. I'm assuming is immediate, right? Like split second, Dr. Jekyll and
Hmm.
Hyde kind of situation. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, the one thought I had was when you're back when back when your mom was starting to show signs and stuff. Were you do you remember like being in your house and kind of having to listen carefully for the mood to shift or strange things to happen?
Uh, mm, not
Not really.
really. Yeah. I think because I was just too young and still didn't really know like what was going on with her,
Yeah.
you know?
Just trying to think back to like I was trying to see if like there was a yeah after the situation where you feel like
Yeah.
you were having to listen very carefully to what was going on in another room or something. Because
Mm.
I've talked to actually Eric was on. Yeah, there's somebody named Eric. I don't know if you heard that episode, but he actually also had a mom who was diagnosed with schizophrenia when he was quite young, and so when he would go to bed, he would kind of listen for like plates being thrown in the middle of the night, kind of thing, when his mother would kind of shift. And so I was, I'm just curious if that was a similar
And
kind of pattern that maybe you noticed.
well, now that you have brought that up, I'm kind of thinking that like before my parents got divorced, and my
Mm-hmm.
dad was drinking and
Mm.
he would get angry with my mom. And so, like, after I'd go to bed, they'd be like yelling at each other. So I think I would probably be listening for that.
Right, right. Yeah.
Um,
So I don't want to I don't want to necessarily dwell on, bad memories and stuff, but I'm just trying to see if there was
no, this is
a
good.
pattern
This is
there.
therapy.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good, good, good. I hope it feels that way.
Yeah. I do remember though, before I was 8, probably about like maybe 6 or 7, and I was over at my best friend's house who lived down the street, and I was having dinner with her and her parents, and we were all sitting around eating, and all of a sudden, all 3 of them yelled at me at like the top of their lungs to eat with my mouth closed.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't know if like that kind of traumatic experience is what triggered the onset of misophonia.
Yeah, it'd be amazing if that was like, one incident could do it, but if, yeah, or maybe more likely just it seemed to be you were kind of like things were happening around that age, and your nervous system might just have been primed to you know to be on guard, and that definitely didn't help with that situation of being yelled at.
Yeah. But
Mm.
I remember that was before, like me getting annoyed with the person behind me,
Mm-hmm.
in class. So, yeah, I don't know if it just like made me more aware of sounds after that,
Yeah, yeah.
or because I have had, experiences down the road and, around my age now with friends where like, I'll tell them about misophonia and I'll try to like say like, oh, like you eat with your mouth open and it triggers my misophonia. And I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, yeah.
And um it's like ever since I tell them that, then they'll mention to me later on, like I wish you never said that to me because now I'm noticing sounds around me. And now
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, there is, I mean, there's a school of thought that sometimes it is kind of quote unquote contagious. Some people think it's a little bit contagious. Yeah, I'm not sure if there've been studies or somebody's really looked at all the anecdotal information about that, but yeah, even on social media, people are try to be careful about mentioning a trigger because sometimes that'll make somebody who maybe already has signs of misophonia just kind of look for that more.
Mm.
That's interesting that your friends, but do they? I mean, do they just kind of say that, and then you don't really hear that again?
Yeah. I think a lot of people, yeah, I think they try to relate, right? And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I get annoyed by those sounds too," but I don't think they really have, like misophonia
Right.
like we
Right.
do, because it's
Right.
just so much more than just, gosh, I wish it was just like a little annoyance, There's so
Yeah.
much more than that.
Right. Right. Um. Okay. Yeah. So, you mentioned that you were thinking back to some things you wanted to talk about. Were there any other kind of like interesting misophonia concepts or anecdotes that you had in mind that you want to share? I know that you mentioned about email that you had some coping methods you wanted to talk about, or ways you deal with it. Do you have some that
Yeah.
you?
So the drinking was one, but obviously I'm trying not to do that anymore.
Right, right. Many of us, many of us have learned that.
But I noticed like obviously exercising, but
Yep.
yoga like first thing in the morning for just 20 minutes helps immensely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just being like healthier, and then and unfortunately, we always want to go like the more natural route, but have taken antidepressants that have
Mm-hmm.
helped
Mm.
quite a
They've
bit.
helped the miso. Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
In what way does it? Because some people have mentioned that they take it, but it kind of dulls their senses, and maybe dulls their emotions a bit. All these things are they have different effects. So it could be, it's obviously different for different people. But did you notice that it directly, like, did it like make the triggers happen less, or your recovery from the triggers was better? Do you know how it kind of like affected your miso?
It was it gave me like less triggers, and then when I did hear a trigger, it didn't. It just was more of and turned it into more of like an annoyance.
Mm,
But I could stand to listen to it. It got rid of like the that burning pain and
yeah.
anxiety and fight flight or fight
Hmm.
feeling and the anger. You know,
Are
I
you still
really
taking medication then?
so the one that I was on before, it was Celexa, and that one helped quite a bit with the misophonia, but I had to get off of that because you can't take it forever and
Mm-hmm.
certain side effects. But now I just started taking Wellbutrin, which
Mm-hmm.
has um been helping, but not as much as Celexa did.
Mm,
So
okay.
I did take the gen test that my doctor prescribed. It's like they collect your DNA and they match up your DNA with the right pharmaceutical, like psychological pharmaceuticals, so that you have the least amount of side effects.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for a whole range of your psychology, so it's like for antidepressants or antipsychotic or for mood stabilizers. It's anything you need. And so Butrin was the one for me to help the most and with the less or the least amount of side effects. But
Gotcha. And you were taking these for like obviously non-miso things. Did you? I mean, do you mention miso at all when you talk to doctors or therapists?
yeah, I talk to my therapist once a week, and I tell him about the misophonia, and he's heard of it. But there's not really any like coping mechanisms that
Yeah.
they suggest. And then doctors are pretty unaware of it. However, I did have the one who said that the antidepressants help with the misophonia. So I'm taking that not just for like anxiety and depression, but also for a full range of things
Mm-hmm.
like the misophonia. Um, it helps with ADD, helps with like, I don't know, yeah, just other stuff. But
Right.
um,
Very. All these are, well, pretty common comorbidities with misophonia. Um, yeah, a lot of people come on with ADHD and anxiety, sometimes bipolar. Um, so a lot of these things go together. I mean that's great news that at least the medication is affecting the misophonia in a positive way.
yeah, yeah, it does. I just get, I don't know, I get worried about like the future and how like just the triggers and how I keep developing new
Mm,
triggers as I get
mm-hmm.
older. And it just worries me that like what about 30 years from now? Am I just going to be annoyed with every single sound out
Yeah.
there? You
Yeah,
know?
I guess. Yeah, I wonder about that too, because I mean, it gets somewhat balanced with the fact that as you get older, you tend to have a little bit more, or you tend to take a little bit more control of your life.
Mhm.
Now, whether that means you just isolate yourself more, or you're just able to kind of like, I don't know, design your life a little bit better. It sometimes does balance it out, but you're right, the triggers don't exactly go away or get less. Um, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's
Yeah.
that part of your brain that's kind of like warning you, and then warning you of the warning, and then warning you of the warning of the warning. That's not, we don't really know how it exactly works, but yeah, it's,
I
many people say that more triggers develop over time.
right. Yeah, I just hope that they can figure out some sort of cure by that
Mm-hmm.
by the time I get older, and then I'm just annoyed with everything and I'm living alone in the shack in the
Right.
woods,
Right.
which doesn't sound too bad. I'd actually like that, but but
We
yeah,
should
I
buy
mean
a
the
chunk of land with
recent
a bunch of little shacks, and
yeah.
that'll be our community.
With misophonia people only.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're just always walking on eggshells around each other.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I got a new trigger recently, and that's like crinkling bags.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like cellophane or mylar, things like that. Like potato
Oh, just
chips and or
potato
anything.
chip bags. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a pretty sharp noise. I mean,
it
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It's a very
So
unpleasant
was
noise.
that not a thing not too long ago?
No, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. It's just, it's new. Maybe it came on like past month or two. And all of a sudden now I'm just annoyed with bags.
Right. Right.
And
Oh,
I
did
was
it
on the
spread to like?
airplane.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. That's not a great
Airplanes are
place.
just a
Yeah.
horrible place for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, there are people on there, crinkling their bags. And
Mm-hmm.
I got my white noise turned up to 100.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you take on your we usually take basically those headphones that you always take with you?
Yeah, yep. Headphones. And I really am trying to find like a good noise canceling headphones, but there's not really such thing. Like it just kind of dims the noise, like earplugs do, but there's nothing actually like completely gets rid of the
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
noise.
No, it's yeah. Noise canceling is a bit of a strong term. it's
Yeah,
it's yeah, not quite noise canceling, but it reduces it. I think they assume that you're gonna play something on top of it.
which
So
helps. Which
yeah.
helps. But sometimes you just want like no sounds at all,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know?
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, airplanes are just horrible for me. And gosh, I
Yeah.
tend to um I tend to move around a lot in airplanes. Like if I'm sitting next to someone who's making those trigger noises,
Ooh.
I'll get up, and I have a system where I'll get up and go to the bathroom, and I'll scope out other seats and look for like an empty seat or a row of
Mm.
empty seats, and then I'll move over there because
Oh
can't
yeah.
sit next to someone for 5 hours making that sound.
I wish I was on planes that row of empty seats. They seem to all be full. Maybe I'm just going to popular places, but yeah, that would be obviously it would be great.
Well, even if it's just a new seat with
Yeah.
someone who's not making the trigger noise.
Right. 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 Right.
Yeah.
Right.
A full row that's free is just very lucky.
Yeah, it's extremely lucky.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Yeah. Well, we're getting close to about. Yeah, I'm getting close to about an hour. Yeah. I'm curious. And yeah. Yeah. I mean, any other recent coping methods or setbacks, like new triggers or something that you've had?
Another one that I have is a typing,
Mm,
which makes things very difficult in the work environment. And
right.
so I
Right.
have to be careful about where I choose to work because in an office, probably would not be good for me. Work from home remotely would be perfect.
Right.
Um, but in school and computer classes was
Oh,
pretty hard for me.
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
School computers are tend to have the loudest keyboards for some reason too. So
Yeah, and it's not that like it's not all typing. Like people who type softly, it's fine.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the people that type very aggressively,
Mm-hmm.
you
Well,
know?
they're more important people. That's why they type so aggressively. So
You know what I mean? Though
yeah,
I just
I know. I
noticed the
know.
difference.
Yep. Yep. I mean,
Um,
I tend to have Apple keyboards, and they tend to be pretty soft. But yeah, the clicky clacky stuff is, I don't know. Some people like that tactile nature of it, but yeah, it's not good for us.
yeah, it's not.
Um, yeah, so I guess yeah, it's interesting. I'd love to kind of keep in touch about like what happens in terms of school and kind of where you go in the future. Um, now that you're older, have you, I don't know, have you talked to your parents or your sibling about Misophonia? Do you talk to them about it now? After like having known knowing it has a name and you're taking medication, like has there been some kind of I don't know, new
Um,
understanding
they're
around it or no?
no.
Okay.
They're still just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever you say. And then they continue on with their life and they still keep doing their thing and making those triggers.
Yeah.
And I've showed them, like the interview with Kelly Ripa. Why do I keep saying Ripka? Sorry.
I don't know this
My,
twice. That's
my
funny.
friend's last
It's,
name is Ripka, so I was
oh, okay.
getting that confused.
Okay.
And anyway, but yeah, they still don't understand.
What about extended family? Anybody that has it, other than half brother or any
um,
anybody at least even understands it, or you talk to anybody about it?
no one
Mm-hmm.
really. I think I'm the only one that has it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think my
Mm-hmm.
dad's got it a little bit, but he doesn't want to admit. However, he's
Really, a
been
man doesn't
telling
want to
me
admit. Oh, okay.
that, yeah, he's been to me about coworkers making trigger sounds that are really bothering
Uh,
him.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, well, you probably have misophonia too. And he's just like, no, I don't have what you have.
Mm,
Okay.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Give him my number. He'll come on the podcast, and we'll sort it out.
Yeah. Oh, I should. That'd be funny.
Um,
Except for everybody could hear his teeth flipping around, and then everyone just immediately shut off
yeah, I think that'd
the
be. I don't
episode.
know. I don't know if I'd be able to edit all that out.
Uh,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
But
Victoria, I mean, yeah, yeah. Anything else you want to share? You've had an interesting background. It's interesting how similar, yeah, parts of it are with other. I know you had kind of, some definitely some rough situations, but it's, yeah, I've heard some of this stuff before, and I'm sure people listening they might be able to relate. I know they'll be able to relate. Um, yeah. Any other things you want to share with people?
um, no, I don't know. Just nice
We
to
covered a
know that
lot.
you're
Yeah,
not alone,
yeah,
and listening
absolutely.
to this podcast really it helps kind of, I don't know, helps with that.
Normalize it a bit in your head, at least.
But yeah, yeah, not
That's
feel
great.
so crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody's crazy in their own way. So
Right.
this is our way.
Especially the people who make sounds.
Yep, I
But
know. They're the craziest.
well, yeah,
Well,
Victoria, thanks for coming on. This is great, and yeah, thanks for sharing everything.
yeah, thank you so much, Adele. I really appreciate you having me on here, and it was really nice to talk with you. And yeah,
Thank you again, Victoria. Again, I wish you the best in your next chapter, whatever it ends up being. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier just to send a message on Instagram at Misophonia Podcast. Follow there or Facebook, and on Twitter, it's Misophonia Show. You can support the show by visiting the Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. Theme music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.